joining us today. Uh, Last week we had our first introduction to JavaScript, and we learned a lot. Our speaker last week was David Mwangi. And before maybe I start today's session, so later David Mwangi to take us through the assignments that we gave out last week. And if anyone faced the challenge, we can solve it from there. Okay, and I think after that, I'll begin today's topic, that's functions and control flow. So I'll be starting with the control flow. So welcome, David.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brian. So I hope that you guys went through the assignment and that I hope that you are able to maybe find the solutions. So maybe you can share if you are able to do the assignment so that we can only tackle the parts that you are unable in order to save time so that Kemboy can continue. So maybe you can say on the chat the area where you got an issue so that we can continue. So I see nothing on the chat. So maybe I can continue on doing the assignment. So the assignment was to give the difference between rate and const variables during the declaration of JavaScript variables. So the difference between the const and rate, during our last session, we said that rate is an immutable data type and you can change the value later. But for const, we said that it is used to declare constant variables like pi, the variables that are not going to change their values later. And then the other was the difference between two equal signs and three equal signs in JavaScript. The two equal signs, they can be used, for example, when you are comparing a string and an integer. Like you can say that string 34 is equal to int 34. So when you use the two equal signs, it means that those two values are equal in JavaScript. And then the three equal signs are used when you want to compare variables of the same data type. So for example, maybe you want a user to enter a value. For example, you prompted them to enter like their name or to enter an integer value. You use three equal signs to show that the values are equal and are of the same data type. So I guess Kembo, you can continue from there. Maybe we can continue with the part of the assignment later after your presentation.
Okay, thank you so much, Dennis or David, for that part that you've taken. So, okay, allow me to maybe share my screen. So I'll be sharing my screen so that we can view the content that I have from this side. So minutes, let me start sharing the screen. Okay, somebody confirm that my screen is visible. Hello?
Yes, yes, Mr. Kembo, your screen is visible.
Okay. Yeah. But I'm still also trying to open my slides.
Okay.
Okay, when I'm still waiting for it to maybe open. So okay, we shall start our discussions today from the control flow, and all we shall be learning will be an extension from what we learned last week. So it will not be something that's like it's going to maybe disconnect us that much. So okay, I think they are on. So okay, for the control flow, okay, we shall be covering things like maybe how to loop through items in items in JavaScript. So we'll be looking things like for loop. Okay, minutes. The slides today are like they're not what's happening. Okay, okay, thank you. It's working. Okay, okay, now control flow. So what we shall be covering is these 6 items. That's the for loop, the while loop, the do while loop, the if statements, the if else, and then we have the if else if statements, and we have the switch statements. So okay, we shall be like taking ourselves on how maybe all of this works. If this is your first time, so we shall be having an interaction that's one-on-one. So whenever you find me that I'm maybe doing it that much fast, please be sure to maybe unmute and interrupt and say, okay, Kimboy, there's a part that you never understood. So what we are going to learn also today is going to carry on to the other sessions that we shall be having. So be sure to maybe be very keen, and after that I shall be giving some assignments to maybe give you another maybe to go and attempt again by your own. So okay, we are starting with a for loop. So these are the slides that I have with me, and I'll be sharing with you. So I don't want maybe to dwell most with the slides. But maybe let me start what's a for loop. So when you want to iterate over a, let's say words, maybe some items, or you want something to happen repeatedly. So instead of maybe saying console.log maybe an item maybe 5 times, you can use a for loop that can make your work very easy. So like for example, here we have a for loop, and with the for loop, this is the syntax. So it always has a start. Like for example, this you can see that it starts with the let I. So this is always the start. And then this I less than 10, this will always be the condition that whenever I iterates and it's now more than 10, the condition will be false. So this condition will always be, whenever the condition will always be true, it will always print on the console. And then the I++ as usual is used to increment. So that's the work of the size over here. So all the codes to be executed will be given in the angle, these curly brackets. Okay, so this is an example, but let's go to the Visual Studio Code. So with me here, I have my index.html file and app.js file. So I've connected the two using the script. So okay, so maybe I was testing this. Let me check if my JS has been linked. So whenever you want to start coding, maybe you have to check if the if if your linking is that correct. So okay, let me go check if it's working. So I'm on my Microsoft Edge. So let me try and open the console. So opening the console, you just have F12. So you can see it console.log the name that I had. So meaning my JS file is linked in the correct way. Okay, so let's start with the for loop. So I think I should be giving you an example. Okay, let's say, yeah, let me get rid of this. Okay, we shall start by saying I want to start. So we last week we started like how to maybe declare variables, and we discussed the use of the let keyword. So let's say let sum is equals to 0. So this initialization of the variable sum to 0. So what if I want to iterate the value of sum to maybe up to maybe 30? So to count from 1 to 30. So instead of me saying, okay, console, let's try this. So that's the reason I want to explain why we need the for loop. So maybe you say console dot log. Okay, maybe you say sum we have, so that was 0. Maybe next time we want also to console.log, sorry, that. So copy. So maybe you can have also writing 1. So this can work, but it's always very tiresome to do this. Maybe 3. So imagine that I want to print more than 30 words, or I want to print more than 30 items. So maybe if I save, there's some functionality in it. So you can see there's 0, 1, 2, 3. But this is always tiresome, and nobody will always recommend you for maybe writing such kind of codes. So that's why we use a for loop. So a for loop will always have the syntax. So for loop will always have the keyword for. So it's a sub word. So you cannot use for as a variable naming. So the for loop will always, so take the start. So the start of our for loop will say we have to let. So we can introduce the iteration values. So variables. So mostly I had some discussions. Why do maybe people iterate with the values I and j? So somebody said it's a rule, but you can iterate with any value. But let's use the normal I, and I have a start that is from 0. So we'll always use this. Is it called? Not a comma, it's a semicolon. And then we go to the condition. We say, okay, while sum is less or equal to maybe 30, then the last part was maybe to have an increment or the size after you wish to increment. So that's the basic syntax that we discussed. So at this point, maybe I want to console. Okay, console dot log the the sum. And after consoling the log the sum, you'll have always to maybe have the sum being incremented. So there's one thing I want to discuss. Whenever you fail to maybe give the incrementation of this sum, it will make your maybe your machine or your browser like to hang, because without telling it to maybe increment, it will always keep on looping. And I think that's the mistake I did this morning. I was wondering like what is happening. So I forgotten to maybe increment the value of this variable. So be always very careful that after maybe you've uh, you've written down a for loop, if you wanted to increment something like in this case, you have always to remember that to increment it, or else you'll find your browser like it's iterating more and more and it's not stopping. So meaning it will consume much RAM, and eventually your laptop will maybe hang. So okay, let's try and
The
run
laptop
to
will
see the
grow.
output. So yes, okay.
I was saying that the
So yeah,
laptop will grow. We
yeah,
call it
that's
recursion.
okay,
When you
exactly.
enter into a code that can't end the it can't execute because it continue repeating the same thing.
Exactly. So that's why you will always have to remember maybe to tell your what, maybe to include this increment. You always include the increment. So here's the output, and the output is that it iterates from 0 to 30. So that was the basic syntax of a for loop. It will always loop through. So whenever, let me now discuss maybe in detail. So whenever you say let I is equals to 0, so it will come and say, okay, the I now value is 0. Is I less or equal to 30? The condition is true. Then it comes over here. What it does is console log out the sum. So the sum at that point is equals to 0. So that's why sum is being consoled to the is being consoled in the browser. Then now what happens? The sum is being incremented. So after it's incremented, so we expect that sum is equals to 1. So the value, then here the value of I is incremented by the I plus plus. So when it's incremented, the value of now I becomes 1, and 1 is less than 30. So it will always continue until the point whereby you will have I is at 31. So it will be false. So whenever anything is false, it will always stop looping through. So that's the basic functionality of a for loop. I don't think if I have any other example, but keep in mind that for loop, we shall be using a for loop maybe to, in the later times, we shall be using a for loop to iterate through arrays. So I don't want to introduce arrays at this point, so we can loop through maybe some strings and so many other things. Okay, this was the basic syntax and maybe to explain the working uh, of a for loop. Okay, let's check a while loop. So what's a while loop? So a while loop is always used to execute a code. So every time, whenever we have the condition being true. So, and here I have the syntax with you, like how to maybe use a while loop. So a while loop will always have a keyword that's while. So the while will always have the condition to be checked. So, and whenever the condition is true, the while will always execute. So until the point whereby the condition in the while loop is false. So okay, let's go and maybe try it out and see how a while loop works. Okay, so a while loop. So for example, what can I take? Maybe let. So let's look for another variable. So we can say let my call some, we can call this a num. So these are variable naming. We let maybe at this point we initialize it with 0. Yeah, okay, and then we can say, well, so this is how you write a while loop. So you'll always have the while keyword. So the while keyword will always have these brackets between it, and you always have to place the condition. So maybe while maybe num is equals to maybe oh well num is maybe, so I want to iterate, maybe it's less than 10, less than 20 there. So while this condition is still true, by the way, like now num is 0 and it's less than 20. So I want some code to be executed. So what can be executed? Maybe I can say, okay, I want you to console look out something like you can say give a string. Yeah, I'm a software engineer. So, okay, after consoling, you do this, you'll always have to increment. Say that after that, the first item has been console.log, like it has been logged out, so you'll have to maybe increment the value of num. So this is what I talked earlier, like, okay, after doing this, always ensure that you increment. So you can try it out like at your own free time, maybe to try and see, okay, what if I don't have now being incremented? What will happen? So you'll find yourself in an endless loop whereby you loop through an item and makes your laptop to hang to restart. So I won't try that out maybe in this session. You'll try it out maybe when after the session you can try it out how to console without incrementing it. So let's so what are our expected output? So maybe one of our attendees to say, because this is an interactive session, so what do we expect? So if you are with me, I will expect maybe someone to share with us what's the expectation of this code. What do you expect to console? You can unmute for the attendees that we have today. You can always try it out because there is no like nobody will criticize you like, okay, why you are wrong.
Brian,
Yes.
so there before you get the answer, Derek is asking how you connect JavaScript file to an HTML so that you can see the console on the browser.
Okay. So let me demonstrate that. So first of all, let me disconnect the live server. So this is my HTML file. So it contains nothing, just a title that it has. And maybe this is how you can connect the script. So how I did it is just writing the word script. So the script source always wants the URL. So that will always take the URL that's app.js because that's how I named the JavaScript file. So after having this, so it means that you've linked to HTML and your your JS file. So okay, I have my live server on, so I'll always try and go live so that I can have everything that I'm doing being saved and being displayed. So okay, and let me show how maybe you get into the console. I'm already on this F12. F12 is whereby you can always have to maybe console. So it's right over here. So you might find yourself maybe pressing the F12. Maybe you find yourself in the elements or you don't find the console, you'll always find this console and everything that you do on console.log will always be displayed here. So for the example that we had, so we said let sum is equals to 0, while sum is maybe less than, while num is less than 20, console.log out that I'm a software engineer. So let's check at the console. So you can see here 20 times. So I don't know if it's visible there. Can I maybe, so it's here. So it tells you that it has iterated most like 20 times and it iterated that I'm a software engineer over there. So that's the output that we gotten by with this code by running the while loop. Okay, so let's check for another iteration that we can have. So we have a do while loop. So a do while loop is almost similar to a while loop. So it has maybe no much difference, but so it's always is not that much, but maybe the syntax is the difference. So maybe here we have the syntax that's a do. So after maybe having the do keyword and opening the curly brackets, we always have the block of code to be executed, and this code will always be executed while this condition is always true. So we've now previously checked on why a while loop is working. So it will always work while a certain condition is true. So the while loop will always contain the condition. So let's take for an example to see how a do while loop works. So I can maybe, okay, let's try and comment out this. Okay, let's write a do while loop statement. So we can have it like, let's say let a is equals to maybe is equals to 1. So we can say, okay, can you do the following? So you're telling it to maybe do the following things as long as maybe the conditions is still true. So maybe do want to console or log out maybe console. Maybe I want to console or log I. So then okay, let me iterate through the I. So what will always happen? So I could have introduced the while loop before maybe giving those console or log. So we have the while loop. So I want maybe A to be printed out whenever the value is less than 5 or maybe less than 10. So you can always have when A is maybe less or equal to 5. So this, let's save it. So what do we expect? Like, for example, we started by letting our variable name is equals to 1. So we have a condition here like, okay, when A is less or equal to 5, do the following things. Console.log out the I almost that 5 times. So our expected output is like, okay, the the values 1 to 5 will always be printed out. Let me look at it. Okay, I think it never worked. Okay, let me stop my live server. Okay, why am I consoling the look out I? It's supposed to be A. So yeah, it is. So the error that we had is that we console or log out the value of I. So it's supposed to be the value of A. So whenever you are told maybe to write a do I loop, this is always what is expected from you. Maybe this is the syntax and maybe an illustration of maybe how it works. So let's check for another. So we're going to the if statements. So the if statements will always come your way, like maybe you're told to check for several conditions. So we have things like the if statements. So if statements will always check for one block of code. So we'll talk about the if else statements, and then we'll talk about the if else with the if, else if, and else statements. So this will always check for one block of code. So it always doesn't consist of many different blocks of codes. Okay, here you say it's used to make decisions within a block of code. So that's what I've said. So here's the syntax. The syntax is always the same, like the for loop that we, I think I gave the wrong, this is not the syntax or maybe an if statement. So I'm sorry, my apologies for that. So it will always have an if keyword, and inside the if we always have the condition. So once the condition is true, we'll expect to console what is inside. So for these sessions, we find ourselves that we're using the console.log, but maybe at a later days, we should be now implementing it maybe in our web pages, maybe where we'll have to maybe collect everything by documents that are taking all the IDs and the selectors. But for now, let's make it simple, just console.log out to maybe have the basic understanding of it. So here we can maybe do that. Let me just comment out this. Okay, so we are to look for an if statement. It's okay. So we had that statement. So the reason why I gave out that example is because we wanted to have a discussion, because last week we were told like how will this code be printed out? So we're having something somehow like funny today. Why are we having to compare two values that is either 15 just which is a string and we have a 15 that is a number. So we want to try out what will happen whenever this code is executed. So we can try it out, maybe say if, so it's always start with an if keyword, and then that was a 15. We can also choose any number, maybe number like 20. So maybe if, let's start with the double quotes, the triple quotes, the triple equals, then maybe compare it with another 20. So we are checking if this 20 with the quotes is equal to the 20. So I'll do the following console.log.
Remember, you have put quadruple equal signs.
Yeah.
You have put quadruple equal signs, 4 equal signs.
Oh yeah, that's 3. Okay, sorry. So we have the 3 equal signs, and then we have maybe we want to console log out to check if that condition is true. Maybe we say if this okay is equals to maybe say I can give it any word. So I don't want to give an answer maybe because I expect somebody to maybe explain to me why the following will be happening. So maybe you say let's give a string. What is on? So it will always look out the window that whenever this condition is true, it will always give us the word comparison or a word. So let's check on the console. Okay, we can confirm that it was not looked out in the browser like if 20 is equals to 20. But if, for example, I will have two equal sides and maybe I have to save it, it will always work. So you see the word comparison is logged out the console. So last week we had a discussion like, okay, how do you compare things using the equal sides? equal sign. So why? So my question is to my audience, like, okay, why maybe if I try and console log out this block of code? So why when I have the double equals, it doesn't console, but whenever I have the the two equal signs as a using to compare the two values, maybe it works. So you can animate maybe before I give an explanation of that. So let's have that session whereby we can have a one-on-one talk together. So you can always make an attempt. Maybe you tell me why this happened, like you can check from the console that is what being looked out there in the console. But whenever I have a double equal equal signs as a easy to compare the values, it doesn't work on the console. Okay, seems nobody wants to try. Maybe I can maybe give that maybe, and then we can still give more assignments on that. So when I have the three equals used to compare values, it will always check for the data types. So for example, the 20 with the what, which is taken as a string, it has these quotes with it, so it will always be a string. So maybe if you want to maybe check it, maybe you maybe type the type of maybe that number type of that 20 to tell you that the type of it is a string. So if you check the type of this other one here, it will tell you that's a number. So that's why a number and a string will never be equal. But when we have the double equals signs, so it will always check for the value. The value here is 20 and the value is 20. That's why it will always be true. So we can carry on with that and maybe check the if-else statements. So what will the if-else statements do? So the if-else statement will always check for the first condition. For example, this, maybe we check that with the two and say, okay, if 20 is equals to 20, this 20 with a string is equals to 20, maybe you say here, we can change the console statement and say they are equal. So, okay, so the if else statement will always have the else keyword over there. So after the last curly brace of the if. So maybe you'll have to console.log out to say if the other value is not true, we'll always have the following being given in the console. Maybe you say they are not equal. So we save that. So let's check out the console. So what do we expect? So before you maybe check everything on your browser, like always take your time to maybe think throughout maybe. So let's check out the expectation of what this code will do. So if 20 is equals to 20, so this will always print out because we have confirmed that yeah, they are equal when I have the two equal signs. So meaning the other block of code will not be locked out. So let's confirm that. See, that's telling that they're equal. But whenever I had a code that will always have maybe the three equals, so this block of code will always be false. So once this block of code is false, it will execute this other block of code. So that's what we are calling the block of code execution. So anything between these curly brackets are the block of codes. So let me save. Okay, it never happened. Console, yeah, console.log. So that was the mistake I had. You see, it's saying they are not equal. So that's all about the if statement and the if else statement. So okay, let's check something else. So we talk about the if statement, the if else statements. So let's talk about the if else if statement. So okay, sometime maybe to maybe look through this. So I think I should come up with a very good example. I gave it through, and I'll also give an assignment maybe to maybe if else statement because this will always execute a range of conditions or checking through many number of conditions. So for example, the if else was used to maybe check something maybe twice. So when you're talking about the if, the else if, and the else statement, so it will always iterate or check through a series of or a number of many different scenarios. So let's try that out. So we can talk about a grading system of a school. So let's do a grading system of a school, or how it's always done with the if else statements. So to maybe show this, let me come over here at the center of the screen. So I think that's visible. Okay. Let me first define maybe the grading. So let's say, for example, if somebody, okay, so if somebody will have maybe a mark, let's say a grade of like, you have something like 70% in an exam, and then, so the variable grade will always have the value of 70. So we are using the if statement to maybe execute. So I'll be using this example to maybe explain the use of the if, and else statement. So when you say if, so it always takes the condition. For example, if grade is less or equal to 90, so we are starting from maybe 90, from 100 to maybe 0. So we want to check the conditions whereby somebody will not have max more than 100 and nobody will have max less than 0. So that's what we are trying to do here. So we always say let the grade is, if the grade is greater than or equal to 90, and maybe, so we talk about the and operator last week. So, and maybe grade is less or equal to 100. So this will always keep the user to maybe give a grade that's between 90 and 100 and not more than 100. So if the grade is between that range, so you'll always want maybe to give that person console.log, or maybe you give that person an A. So if somebody now never met, for example, we can see that, let me say this is my grade. So I never met to maybe have this 90 to 100. So I have a 70. So if I never met that, which means another code must be executed. So else, so that's where we use, so okay, the else if, I'm sorry, because you are going to check many things. So the else if is always written that way. So after execution of the if statement, so if this is equals to false, it will execute the following code. So else if, okay, before that, let's work. Okay, let me say, for example, if I had 90 there, for example, so you'll expect that I have an 8, so that was console. But in real sense, I had 70, so we'll have to check the else if statement. So the else if will also take a condition, that's the grade. So if the grade is maybe less than less or equal to maybe 80, and also we have to take a range of maybe, and also maybe we say if the grade is maybe greater than, or well, is less or equal to, so from which point are we taking it from? So we're taking from 80 to 89, so it will be 89 at this point. So if somebody have that kind of grade, so we can say console.log, maybe you give that person a B. So if you ever made that, you also have to iterate over and say, okay, else if, so else if grade is something like 70 to 79, right? So if somebody has something that is greater than or equal to 70, and we also have to check the and to compare the two, and maybe the grade is less than or equal to 79. So we always want this person to maybe have a C. So console.log, so that person has maybe a grade of C. Okay, okay, at this point I had a 70, so I think I should be given a C. So let's try that. Save. So you see here I have a value at the grade of C. So let's continue. What if somebody you have something less than that? So we can also use the else if. So let's check for the condition. So I think this is always something you're always given in exams maybe to do. And if you ever face challenges, I think this would be an opportunity for you maybe to see where you always make a wrong so whereby you always go wrong. But if you always get it, so I think this is always what you do maybe to compare. So it's always between 60 to 69. 69. So you don't solve the log. So this person will have something like let's make it so fast to maybe check somebody that has maybe so we're checking that somebody who has so we've checked about 62, so we're now checking for 50. So else if the grade is greater than so greater sign or equal to maybe 50. So we're checking 50 to 59. Yep. And grade is less or equal to 59. So this person will have an E. So don't know. So this person will have an E. So else if so why are you having error here? So we never terminate. Okay. So
Umetumia else off kwa ya D.
okay.
Hello.
I think that was the issue. Okay, thank you. Okay, else if then maybe let's check for the last condition. So this way now the maybe the else is going to be used without the else if. So maybe if I'm not also checking for another condition, but I think I'll be checking for somebody who has maybe somebody might enter that okay, I have a grade maybe 101 or something above 100 or less than that. So we always check how to console.log. So until that person, okay, you have an invalid. So whenever somebody will have to enter as is below what we specified here, so the system will always throw this that person hasn't entered a number that's not valid or a grade that's not valid. So let's check it out. So let's change this something like 0. Let's change the values. So I never took 0. What's happening? Okay, so I still have to iterate through. So if somebody has a value between, I think here should be 0. So greater or equal to 0 to maybe something 59, let's save it. So you see this person has an E. So that's the mistake that we made. So you'll have always to maybe check your codes to check if they're working. So if you don't check your codes, maybe you'll have undecided outputs or some of the outputs that was not decided for it. So if somebody was to say I have something like negative 10, so what are our expectations that this person has a grade that is and the grade of this person is invalid? So you can check it, the grade is invalid. If I have something like more than 100, maybe give 105. And in our system, maybe we specify that somebody will not have marks more than that. You can also check that the grade is still invalid. So that's the use case of maybe an if statement of how you can use it. So with this example, yeah, you can maybe still have more and more examples of it, but I think I've explained maybe the working of the if else if and else statements. So the else statement will always come the last, and the others will always be able to check or look through maybe the other block of codes. Okay, I think let's check for something else. Talk about the else if. So let's talk about the switch statements. So I think this will be the last one before we get into functions. So the switch statements. So what's a switch statement? So if you want to maybe it's almost same as the if else statement, but these are different scenario whereby it will always execute the only the expected places. So you can say it's used maybe if you want to select between multiple choices, and so you can have maybe you can grade somebody using the switch case. But we shall look for an example maybe that we shall use to use that we can use maybe to explain the working of a switch statement. So this is the syntax. So the syntax will always take the expression. So we have the case values, the code, and everything. So let me not dwell most on the syntax. So let's check on the working of a switch statement. So and mostly people don't like using the switch statements, and I never understand why people don't use it. So it's the norm whereby if someone are given a task, they will always use the if else statement. But let me today make it very simple. I said next time maybe if you are given a task and maybe you want to maybe to do the task, you can maybe check out the switch statement. It's always very easy. So let's start by maybe giving the so by declaring it, so you can say const. So let's check for the days of the week and maybe the to-do list somebody maybe will have to do. So you can say you can declare a variable day, and maybe you can prompt a user to maybe tell us the way of the week. So we can say day is equals to prompt. So we can prompt somebody. So and we one day have an session maybe to talk about how to prompt somebody to give you a value of a day. So we can say prompt and then you tell that person enter day of the week. So after that, so that's where the switch statement comes in. So we'll have to use the switch keyword. So the switch will always take the variable or the variable that we declare there as the day. So anything the user tells us, if the user tells us today is on Monday, so we will want something to be done on Monday. So okay, we can have the curly brackets over there and maybe say we take the case. So if the case is Monday, so never forget to maybe, so if the case, maybe let's touch on that. Maybe if the day is Monday, right? So if the day is Monday, so to execute it, you use these colons before maybe consoling out what should happen. So you say console.log and give maybe a task, maybe that person to do. So maybe do JavaScript. So whenever a day is Monday, somebody will do a JavaScript. So okay, let's check for another day. So after maybe taking that, we'll always have to break. So I'll explain why we're using breaks. So let's check for another case. Second time, then I'll explain the use of cases and the breaks. So let's check if the day is Tuesday. Tuesday. Okay. The day is Tuesday. After that, so you say console.log. Okay. Maybe you do HTML, okay, and we break out from that. So we can take another case. So what if it is Wednesday? Wednesday. So the day is Wednesday, maybe you can solve but long and say that. Tell that person to do something maybe on CSS, can break out from that scenario. So we can also take another case. So you can see using Visual Studio maybe tells me everything what to, so how the things are always aligned. So you can check my codes are always aligned. So after breaking the statements, it will always take me to align with other cases. So Thursday, I will expect that person to maybe console long. So maybe you say, so maybe somebody do something on AI. Let's take our last as Friday. So let's break out first, and then we do a case whereby the day is on Friday. It's on Friday. Then you can tell that person to maybe take a break. So you tell that person maybe take a break. So after that, maybe after taking a break, so we can also, yeah, let's break out from that. So a user may enter another day of the week whereby we are not interested with, so we always have the default. So the defaults, maybe if somebody enters something that's not between Monday and Friday, so you tell that person that maybe tell that person, what can you tell them? So we can say you're not allowed to work. So I think with that, so let me explain the working of this code. So it will always maybe check the prompts of maybe tell the user, okay, enter the day of the week. If a user maybe enters Monday, it will ask. So if the day is Tuesday, it will tell the user to do the following thing. So that's how the working is. So it's so fast to execute that. It always check maybe Tuesday, run the and execute the word okay on this case. So it will always go direct to the case whereby it's equal to maybe Tuesday. If somebody enters Friday, it will always execute the block of code that is on Friday. Okay, if somebody doesn't enter the valid date that we haven't, or the day of the week that we have not covered, so it will always default out of that cases and maybe give the user that, okay, they're not allowed to work. So let's check it out. So it says enter the, okay, it says, why is that? Then the left server once again. Okay, here it is. So enter the day of the week. So let me enter Monday. So whenever I enter Monday, okay, I'm not on my console. Sorry. Let me open my console. So let me refresh the page. So enter the day of the week. So I said Monday. So if it's on Monday, it says do JavaScript. Maybe I refresh again and say maybe my day is on maybe Friday. It says take a break. It's Wednesday, for
David.
Hello, I think I was interrupted. I think my cable disconnected. Somebody confirm, please, that you can hear.
Yeah.
Okay, where did I left you guys? Because I think maybe I've been disconnected for a very long time. I never knew that.
Entering the word at the day of the week on the browser.
I'm sorry for that. My cable disconnected, and I think that's when my network was being interrupted. So I was trying to enter the days of the week. So let me begin to. I started with Monday. So Monday it says
Yes.
do JavaScript. So I've entered something. Let's say try Friday.
Please share your screen, Brian.
Okay. I'm sorry. I think most of the screen cannot be seen. It's working.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was trying to enter the days of the week. Maybe Wednesday. Okay. So it says do CSS, and we captured the day. Maybe somebody enters a day like Sunday. So it always tells that person you are not allowed to work because we never captured the case on our switch statement. So that's the working of a switch statement. So let's check out. So I think now we are entering into functions. So we have some minutes left. So let me have to introduce them and maybe talk about some of the what how to maybe use functions, why we need functions. Yes, and it is an extension of maybe what David also said last week. So he had an introduction to functions. So I saw it may be better to maybe still emphasize on some things on functions, yeah, before we call it a session. So why you always need a function? A function will always take a block of code and then execute several number of tasks, maybe inside of it. Okay, like if you were to maybe like let me take an example in my Visual Studio Code. So meaning I have to create another folder. So this folder contains control flow. Okay, let me try and create a folder that will take functions. So and all these codes I've given a link on my slides. So I'll share the slides so that everybody can have these codes that I'm running. So we have index.html. Then let me give up.js file. So index.html, we try and link the script. So I want to link to my app.js file. Maybe start going live. Use it from that. Okay. So app file should be an empty one, right? So okay, the working of functions. So we're talking about functions in JavaScript. So okay, maybe I want to do something, and I don't want to keep myself maybe repeating and myself so several times. So you always have to maybe use a function. So that's the use case of a function. Okay, I don't know which example can I give to maybe explain that. Okay, maybe I will find an example of it. So let's have a discussion of maybe why maybe we need functions. So, okay, this is the explanation on the syntax and everything. So here's something that an illustration that I've given. So a function will always have the function keyword. We always have a function name, and a function will always take some things with it. So I'll also be maybe differentiating between something called parameters and so a function will always take a parameter, and when you want to call a function, these parameters, So it's not a must that, okay, each and every time you must pass the parameters of the argument. Some other functions will never contain them. But in most cases, you will find parameters and maybe those arguments. So, and I'll explain this, the function, keyword, the name, the parameters being passed, and maybe the arguments. So I will explain the usage of parameters and arguments using an example. So let's go to Visual Studio Code. So let's run a function. So writing a function, you always have the keyword function defined. And maybe also talk about the different types of functions. So there's different ways of how you can write a function. So let's begin with this kind of function over here. So that's a function, say, let's say product. So taking the product of maybe items. Okay, say function. So we're going to take a product of maybe, so I should not be using arguments. Okay, let me use arguments, the arguments and parameters so that I can maybe be able to explain them. So I'm going to take values like, let's say A and B. So anything that you pass to a function is called a parameter at the top. And people always confuse that. And then after that, a function will always have to return something, or a function will always have to do something. Okay, we'll always have to return maybe A and maybe A multiplied by B. So this is what the function will do. A function will always multiply A and B. Okay, let's talk about the calling of a function. So to call a function, maybe because I'm consoling them, so let me console.log. I want to maybe reassign the values of A and B. So reassigning of these values is what we call maybe what I mean this is called the arguments. So we can say console.log pass the parentheses. So we can call the function product and passing in the values. Maybe I want to console.log out. I want to maybe pass the parameters 4 and 7. So passing these parameters or these arguments. So it will always say the A is equals to 4 and B will always be equals to 7. So when you so the calling of a function is I could just place this somewhere else before I execute it. So let me take it out first. So this is how you call a function. So it always, like for example, console.log is also a function. So it's a function called by itself. So it always have the name of the function and the parentheses. But inside the parentheses, I placed some items. So this is what we call arguments. It always takes maybe it always like replaces the values upside there. Maybe I can say products. Okay, let me just replace them where they want so that I can maybe use it over and over again. So first, let me check on the working of this. So let me go live. I think I'm not live again. So let me go to my console. So it can say that the value of 7 times 4 is 28. So assuming that I wanted to maybe run another function, another function call, maybe I want to multiply another value. Maybe I want to multiply this time. I want to multiply 5 and 5 and save it out. So you will find that it says that the first one is 28, the second one is 25. So, and this is the reason why we need functions. So this, I think this is a very good explanation that I can give why we need functions. So you can multiply as many as you want, 7 times 7. So the first value is equals to A, and the second one will be equals to B. So this is the basic syntax and maybe the working of a function. 7 times 7 is 49, so that's the expected output. So that's 49. Okay. So we are done with that. So let's now talk about the function. Oh, so these are the function terms. So we talk about the function name. So this will always be identifiable function. So the reason why we have something a function name, we cannot have another function maybe in the same code called product again. So this is like a variable name. So you cannot rename it. Okay, we have parameters. The parameters are the things that we've talked about. They're always listed as placeholders. So talking about a placeholder. So for example, A holds the value 4. Okay, we're talking about the arguments. The arguments are always passed with the function call. So when calling the function over here, so we try to maybe pass the values maybe of those A and B. So I think those are the terms we can see on a function. So I also talk about the function call. So never forget to use the brackets, because whenever you try to call a function without the brackets or the what, is it called the brackets? This is over here. I think that's the name. So without them, the function will not be called. So you always have to place them. So we are looking on the types of, I think that's the next thing, the types of functions. So we have a different number of, or a number of functions or types. So we have a named function, we have the synchronous, the anonymous functions, we have the arrow functions, the constructor function. So these are new one. This is what immediately invoked a function, callback, and a generator. So I think we should be covering at least 4 of the mainly used. That's the main function. The asynchronous, no, they're not the anonymous, the arrow function. So we cannot talk about the constructor function because maybe at this point the OOP part of it. So also want to cover on the other two. And the callback function, yeah, the 4 of them. So it's going to be the name function, anonymous function, arrow function, and the callback function. So okay, so I think I should start with the named function. Okay. Okay, here's maybe some explanation of it, of how a named function will always be. So let's take an example. So like for example, here says a function, maybe say hello, maybe console.log out. So maybe I'm poor in maybe an explanation, but let's demonstrate the working of that code. Okay, let me comment out this. Now let's start. We are beginning with a named function. Okay, let's start with that. So we can, let's use a function maybe to add the numbers. Yes, we can do a function maybe to add numbers. So we also have the keyword function. So maybe I want to add the numbers. So adding numbers, let's give the parameters of it, maybe the A and B of it again. So maybe what I want it to return is the addition of maybe A plus B. Okay, I want my function to maybe add the value of A and B. Okay, let's try out to console. So this is the working of a named function. Like you assign a name to a function. Even the one that we've done is a named function. So I think I'm almost repeating the same thing. Console.log. We're giving that values. So we want to call the function, that's the function that's add numbers, and it give the values of them. Maybe want to add 2 and 3. Let's save that. You can see the values 5. So that's how maybe a named function works. So let's talk about the anonymous function. Okay, anonymous function, always maybe it's the reassigning of maybe the function itself. So like for example, here we have a function, this is a normal function that's going to be assigned to maybe a different variable. Then later on, we're going to call the variable itself. So you can take some of the same stuff. Let me comment out as we proceed. So we are now looking at the anonymous function. So any function that you will use, it has no effect, but maybe with the new use of the arrow function that I'll be able to discuss, maybe that's the kind of function that maybe people are now using it. But any function that you can use, it will execute what you want. Let's maybe read user. Okay, be equals maybe 2. So the name of the function, so we are assigning the function to a variable, so a function itself. So this is the normal function, how our function is written. And maybe inside the function, I want maybe to console.log out something. Okay, you can say, okay, hello user. Okay, how will I call this kind of function? So because you have assigned the name of the function, so you always have to use, yes, you always have to call the function this way. So whenever you forget to give the brackets, it will never work. So you have always to call a function using the brackets of it. So when you execute this, it will greet the user. Maybe we will give the name, but it has no problem. So let's execute it. It says hello user. But if I want to call the user many times, I will not be required to maybe write the code over and over again. So I'll maybe console.log out maybe 5 times. So if maybe you had different number of users, maybe make the code maybe that much maybe to greet many different people. So I think we can do that rather than maybe greeting or maybe the same user 5 times. So this hello user 5 times. So we can try and maybe greet different people at once without maybe using the same name of user. Okay, let me like take that out, then write again another function. So maybe we use the function, maybe let's say hello to a user, for example. But this is an unnamed function. It's okay, we can just do that. Okay, we take the name so as a parameter. Just scroll up. Okay, we're taking the name of that user. And then maybe you want to console.log out, maybe greeting that user, maybe console.log. Okay. So let's use backticks. So you can see hello. So at first place, it will always take the value of a user within the brackets. So let's take the variable name or the parameter names of hello, and maybe say how are you. Okay. So anytime that I come here and maybe say hello, I'll say hello and pass in maybe the name. So you can say here hello David. So and this is how systems always work. So they always have maybe sending emails to different people. So always have something that operates this way. Maybe you can have here Brian. So you can have here somebody like Sarah, Kevin, and something like James. So with this kind of code, so I'll not be required maybe to rewrite the function again, but I'll just be calling them over and over again. So I'll expect a function or something, an output that hello, maybe David, how are you today? The next person will be greeted like hello, Brian, how are you? Like that's it. So you can check the output that is hello, maybe David, how are you? Hello, Brian, how are you? So this is how you can use it maybe to do many different things without repeating yourself. Okay, so let's talk about the arrow function. So the arrow function came with the ES6 format. So the ES6 came in 2015. So this I showed you maybe how to write a function. So you can always have the arrow with it. So let's take an example of how maybe you can write the function. So it operates like any other function. Maybe the syntax is what you always change. So let's take that and say, okay, let's try maybe multiply or do what? Yeah, let's try maybe give a multiplication of something. Let's say can say multiply as a variable of it. So let multiply something be equals to. So it will always have that brackets of it. maybe let's pass in also parameters. I don't know why I like using parameters of one. And then we can give the arrow. So that's why it's called an arrow function. It always have an arrow with it. So okay, when we should be learning maybe React, we always have to use the arrow function because it's much faster than maybe using the normal function. But also you can still use them maybe even without using React, you can always use the arrow function. Maybe it's a return the multiplication of A and B. So like another function, we'll have to call the multiply. So we say multiply. So console. Okay, let's call that function that's multiply. So to always take, maybe let's multiply 3 and maybe 4. So always use commas when you want to differentiate the two of them. So it will always understand the first value is equals to A and the second value is equals to B. So expected output is 18. So exactly that's 18. So that's the working of an arrow function. So let's talk about the callback function. So I think, yeah, this will be the last thing that we're covering today, a callback function. So a callback function is always passed as an argument of another function. And so I'll be giving maybe the syntax on how maybe you can use a callback function. But later on, we shall be talking, maybe because we've shared the course outline, you've seen that we shared things like promises and how maybe to handle asynchronous code and all that, we'll be able to maybe use the callback functions over and over again. So it's always used inside of another function to call another function. So it's something like that, calling another function. So maybe let me give the working of a function or the over callback function. So let's take, for example, a function that says maybe, yeah, we can use that we had in the example. Let's calculate maybe a sum of maybe. So, and it will always be the callback function is always taken as a parameter of another function. So we can say we can give a parameter of a b. So we can call it a callback, but it's not a must to be a callback. So we have three parameters over here. So we have a, b, and the callback. So let's, for example, let's the result of this. So you see, I'm using another kind of variable that I've not defined before, but I will define it when I'll be using to maybe to call the output of it. So let's result maybe of a. Maybe let's add a. So we can divide. We'll never use the division of it. So it always have callback. So let's call back there. And so let me have the other code that maybe I want to maybe to function. So not another code, but I'll try to call the code. So I'll be using the calculate sum over here and try to pass in the values. So okay, I'll pass the values like maybe 10 and then 5. Okay, and the callback is always a function, so it will be passed as a function, and the function may be calling the result. I have some errors here. Why am I entering into this? Okay, I think is the problem. So it will always maybe let's say console, but long out the result. I'm still facing some errors because I have not used the comma over there, right? So this is the working of a callback function. So we can see this callback function is passed in as a parameter, first of all, in the first function that is there, calculate sum. And then it will be used maybe to call the value that is of the what of the value of the so if the how do I explain? So the callback will always take the result. So which result is maybe the division of A and B. So it will be used in this other place, but maybe to call maybe the working of another code elsewhere. So what do we expect in this code? So we are expecting that maybe 10 will always maybe divided by 5. So this A will be assigned to 10 and 5 will be assigned to B. So what will happen is 10 divided by 5, we expect a 2, something like that. It's working. So I think that's the working of a callback function. But maybe to say I've not covered everything on the callback function because callback functions maybe it's maybe used maybe if you want something maybe to take some time, you can use the set timeout maybe to make some code execute first before the other one. But I will not maybe want to touch on it because we shall be having a topic on that also. So I think with that, we've come to the end for the end of today's session. So thanks all for attending for this session. Yeah, I provided the links to maybe the course that I have today, so you can always go and try it out at your own time. So with that, I think this is the time whereby we can have question and answers. So maybe discussions on the places maybe you never understood, and yeah. So thank you so much. Anybody with a question?
Hello, Brian.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Like, can you explain on the use cases for the different types of functions? Like maybe the arrow function, the normal function, and the regression function.
Okay, the different scenarios whereby you can use them.
Yeah, they are different. They are use cases. Like the way, for example, like you can use ret for mutable data types and const for mutable that way.
Okay. So I think I will not be very sure. Maybe okay, whereby you can use other function maybe elsewhere. So maybe somebody can maybe try and maybe tell us about it because yeah, I've never maybe tried to use. So, but for the callback function, maybe I can say that I've been able to do it maybe in the synchronous JavaScript, whereby maybe I would wish certain code to execute first before another code to execute. But for the rest, I have found myself using it maybe at most cases, but I cannot define maybe how best can use another one than the other.
So to share my small knowledge on that,
Okay.
the normal functions are mostly used. For example, maybe you can use a function before you define it. For example, maybe if you define a function in line 80 of your code, you can use it in line 50 and it will still work. But for regression function, you can't use a function before you define it. And then for the arrow functions, they are mostly used in the JavaScript libraries for maybe like React. They are mostly used in React. So that's what I know about the use cases of the different types of functions.
Oh yeah, sure. Thanks so much, David, for sharing with us the different scenarios of maybe how we can use the functions. Let's give the floor is all ours. Like, okay, we can try and have maybe different people asking the questions. Yes, let's have it lively. Like, okay, let's not be attending it. We keep quiet. We maybe if you don't understand something, you can always share with us. So this is the time we can have the kind of interaction.
In way, I think we can do this because you remember last time we did not have enough time for our members to introduce themselves.
Yes.
So we can do this today. Maybe they introduce themselves. Maybe they can do this for maybe like 20 seconds. You introduce yourself and say like how you see about the event. You do that in 20 seconds. If the event is well, or maybe something that you are expecting next and such. or how we can do in order to make our events better and such.
Sure, we can do that. So let's have maybe let's give everybody a chance maybe to speak.
Yeah, those who are wearing and those who are wearing, they can introduce themselves and maybe share something.